Hello and welcome to Your Neighborhood Show. I'm Carolyn, and the reason I started this podcast is because it actually comes from my own life's journey of growing up in Mumbai, India, in a very strong, connected neighborhood where pretty much everyone knew everyone. And then over my 22-year marriage, I inadvertently, here in Australia, I inadvertently got disconnected or isolated rather. And after my marriage breakdown, I was kind of reflecting on my life and wondering, how did I come from that strong community and connectedness, and now when I need support the most, I don't have it. And so I went on this journey of wanting to get myself supported again and build that network of support around me. And in the process of doing that, I realized that there were many others like myself, and it's everywhere. There's disconnection everywhere. And so what the podcast is about drawing out beautiful stories, amazing stories actually, of everyday amazing people from their lives at times when they felt connected as well as disconnected, and to normalize it. But then how do we then move from times when we are disconnected and feel supported again? I've been so lucky to meet some amazing people through this process, and what I've realized is when I'm intentional about getting to know somebody, I can get to know them in 3 to 4 hours. And that's been the biggest blessing for me. Our episode today is with the amazing Yani Mills. Yani is, in my opinion, a choir director extraordinaire, a beautiful heart singer. She is also a voice coach as well as a band leader. And Yani has actually sung at a party of mine, so I know how well she can bring a crowd together and have people rocking it. But she also taught my son, so I know she's an amazing vocal coach. But most importantly for me, Yani's superpower is that she has this amazing ability to connect people through her choirs. And I was lucky enough and privileged enough to be at her last session of a 8-week choir program and meet with the members over there after that event and hear from them firsthand how her little connection exercises, which she kind of weaves through her every week session, had actually transformed some of their lives in ways that you would not imagine. So thank you, Yani. That's a huge thing. When you connect just one more person in the world, you've shifted the world. So you're amazing. Welcome. And thank you for accepting my invitation to be here today and to share your amazing story. We have talked prior to being over here, and I'm still so moved that I hope I don't start crying during this episode. But welcome to the show. And
Thank you so much. It's an absolute privilege to be here, and I'll be crying with you because it was quite an amazing chat that we had leading up to this, and it was such a deep thing to reflect on life.
Yes, and talking about connection, I do remember us the first time we met. We met at the pool in Yeronga. We were both
so auspicious, wasn't it?
Yes, at an aqua aerobics class, if you remember.
I do.
And there was like instant connection between us. And instead of doing aqua aerobics in the pool, we were doing aqua connection.
We were
chatting away that we almost got thrown out of there.
Yep, we nearly did. They were like, "You're going to behave or what?" And then we stayed for another, I think it was 2 hours.
Correct.
Just chatting and talking about life.
And our friendship has grown since then and become deeper and more understanding of each other's lives. But having you here, and I can't wait for you to share with our guests a bit about your story.
Thank you.
So my first question for you today is, and it's a bit of a loaded question, so you take and answer what you want from there. What has been your earliest recollection in your life of a time in your life when you felt connected as well as disconnected?
That's a great question. I love that because I think that's the basis of most of our lives, is how this happened as a child. And I'm reflecting on this. It's interesting because I think there was an element with the disconnection of that whole, and this is very common for most people, not being picked for the basketball team, or the netball team. I think that happened as well, but I think there was time before that where I felt disconnected from my family. My grandfather is a big part of my psyche growing up, not always for good, really. And I felt a disconnection from him and a disconnection from my family because we were being raised by my grandparents, as my mother was a single mum. But at school, it was definitely because I was different. We were different. We were born in Israel. We ate different foods. We had accents. I was mouthy as well.
You were what?
Mouthy.
As
in a mouthy. As well, I had opinions about things, and I thought, I always tried to help. My grandmother was a real helper person, and she said, always try and help if you can. And I do remember, it's coming back to me now, I wrote something on the board. I went and corrected something that was on the board, and I wasn't not sure if it was the teacher or the student, but I corrected it and I got in trouble, really bad trouble. I had to sharpen pencils for hours, and one time I think they even washed my mouth out with soap, things like that. Yeah, and I remember that the kids didn't like me because I spoke out. But I didn't have, and I think this is for a lot of women too, a lot of girls, I didn't look very normal. I had glasses and I had a, funny looking face, little button nose and bad haircut and chubby and all those sort of things. So there's a lot of disconnection, especially at school, with assimilating and being the same and being cookie cutter, and I definitely wasn't cookie cutter. And so that was a big thing, and I noticed through life where, like, again, on reflection, you pick up these things as children and you carry them into your adulthood.
Yes.
Which is kind of scary, and also great place to start with therapy.
And you said, from what I remember, there was a girl that you befriended,
Madeline.
Or she befriended you.
Yes, Madeline.
And that kind of helped you a bit
It really
during
did.
school. Yeah.
Yeah, she accepted me no matter what, because she was such a lonely girl. She was the youngest of 6, and she was kind of the baby, and so all her siblings were much older. And she looked after me. She took me roller skating. We used to jump on the train and go to the Canterbury roller skating rink, the ice skating rink as well, back in Sydney, and we would play all these video games together.
Yeah.
Those arcade games. And I said, I don't have any money. We never had any money, and she would just put 20 cents in the slot to keep me going because she knew she'd always win, but also because she knew she had someone to play with.
Yes.
And so that felt so good. I felt guilty because I didn't have any money, but she was like, don't worry, I've got money, but I haven't got any good friends. And we were absolutely tight as best friends.
Oh, that's beautiful.
Yeah, we'd do anything for each other. We're just so tight. And she was, I think, a year older than me. I can't remember, but I think she was my sister's age. But
and have you been able to maintain connection there or not?
I didn't, unfortunately. I don't know where she went. She got married and she's changed her name, so I don't really know. I'm not sure. So.
And tell me about your grandmother. You said you were quite connected to your grandmother. That's the strongest, possibly the strongest connection in your childhood.
That's right.
And adult years as well. You were
and
quite
adult
connected,
years, until she died when I was about 18. But she was just this amazing woman. Obviously had time for us, and I thought she was like a mini god. She was so important to me. I love my mum, but the connection with my grandmother meant so much to me. She was a feminist. She was also mouthy and, spoke her piece, and she had great books in her library. We did yoga with Swami Saraswati in the 70s. We did that together because I was home a lot because I was the youngest one. My sister was already at school, and so I spent a lot of time with my grandmother and, just walked around with her, and she took us to the dentist a lot. I remember going to the dentist a lot with my grandmother, like constantly going to the dentist. So we got our teeth looked after by her, but she was always looking after us. She was the one there because mum was out being a single mum. So, yeah. So I loved her.
And so you stayed with your grandmother.
Pearl Harrison, her name is.
Who your grandmother's name was?
Yes, I just want to say Pearl Harrison is her name, and she's really important if anyone wants to Google this. She, I don't know if she's up there, but Pearl Harrison helped start the Betsy Women's Refuge in Bankstown in Sydney in the 70s, which was the second women's refuge in Sydney, I think, next to the Bessie or Elsie, I think, I can't remember. But yeah, she and a woman called Phyllis Johnson started the Betsy Women's Refuge, and she was the secretary for it.
Oh, that's amazing.
Amazing. And
you must be so proud of her.
I'm so proud of her, so proud of her. I've got this, I should have brought it, thought to bring it, framed picture of, a certificate for my grandmother for her services. And so she was quite a feminist as well. So I got a lot of that, and also the service part. It's interesting that the service part, which you'll talk about later, was definitely instilled by my grandmother. We went to Lidcombe Hospital, and we used to basically help make tea and coffee for the patients there.
How old were you?
I think it was probably between the ages of 9 and 11.
That's so amazing. Yeah, wow.
Yeah, it was wonderful. It was really good because I was kind of shy in those days. But she would say, go and talk to the people and offer them a cup of tea. The people who were quadriplegic, paraplegic, and permanently in hospital. They were kind of a wing that was a residence area, and that's where we started.
There's something special about being brought up by grandmothers and by grandparents, I think, because they're much more. I know I'm a grandmother now, and I know how I am with my grandchildren as opposed to how I was with my children. If you look at that stark contrast, and not by, I don't have to look after my children like your grandmother had to care for you all because your mother had to work, but just even with the little time that I have much more patience, I'm much more mature, I hopefully a little bit more wiser than I was a mother. But
I can say categorically you probably were, because my grandmother, when I found out that the relationship between my mother and my grandmother wasn't as good, and she was youngish, but also she was old fashioned and all that. But as she grew and grew us up with her knowledge and her new information, I guess. And that was so wonderful.
So amazing. I know somebody else who was raised by their grandparents, and I think that's a great thing. I think we need to have children when we're older, not younger.
I
when
highly
we've got
agree.
Wisdom and time and everything else, patience.
I literally said when I was 40, I was like, I'm ready to have kids now.
So tell me something. I remember you telling me that your grandmother, her name was again
Pearl Harrison.
Pearl Harrison used to do manuscripts. So she was typing up. She was a good typist.
She was a great typist. She was a receptionist not receptionist, but a secretary for, I think his name was Dr. Madison, who wrote maths books for curriculum in Sydney. He was not Madison. What was his name? I can't remember. Should know this, but it's all gone. Menopause. Yeah, this amazing doctor and professor in Sydney who wrote maths books and science books and stuff. So that's where she was coming from, a lot of that science. She even named her cat Psyche.
Wow.
Yeah. So I knew how to spell the word Psyche, Psyche.
And then you said that she got to type it was an autobiography of
biography.
A biography.
One of the biographies, or one of a further maybe four volumes. It was the second one in 4 volumes about Sai Baba.
Yes. So tell me, how did you? And then that followed on. So tell us, how did you become a devotee? You were a devotee of Sai Baba for many years.
Yeah,
a follower. Whatever's the word.
Avid devotee, an absolute
devotee. Okay,
100%. No questions asked.
I think when I met you in 2017, that was one of the things you told me. So tell us, how did that all happen?
Well, I was at home sick, having had a diagnosis of aplastic anemia, which is I thought was blood cancer, or was bone marrow cancer. I was told back then it was bone marrow cancer.
So first of all, how old were you at that time?
7, 8, 7 going on 8. And I was somebody noticed at a camp, at one of the camps I was at, that I looked very pale and said, you need to go and see a doctor. And I got the diagnosis of aplastic anemia, which is at the time I was told it's bone marrow cancer, but it's a form of leukemia.
Right.
But it actually isn't. It's a blood disorder. But I only found that out many, many, many years, like 10 years, less than 10 years ago, that it was a blood disorder. So it was, at the time, no one had survived it that we knew.
Goodness.
Because it was in the 70s. There wasn't news like there is now. But at the time they said no one survived it, so my prognosis was not good. So I was intended to live with treatment, with hormone treatment, for at least till I was 15. Maybe
Wow.
that's the longest I could live, and I was 8 by the time I'd gotten all the tests done.
Gosh,
So-
that would have been devastating for your grandmother
and my mum.
and your mother. Yes.
Yes, it was. And they didn't tell me. They did not tell me. And I found a
Right.
letter many years ago in a box that had...
Oh, you didn't know, of course. Well, you were still young, I suppose, and they didn't want to stress you out.
Yeah, they didn't
wouldn't
want to stress
you
me
wouldn't
out.
probably kind of grasp the. Anyway,
Yes,
keep
because
going.
I think they thought, well, it's no use because I seemed healthy,
Yes.
and no use telling me until things got to the stage where they couldn't. I didn't know when they would have anyway. But but it didn't happen as it turned out. My grandmother started the coincidence, and this is where the sort of the story begins of how we can, where I think sometimes we can grasp at things and cherry pick things that we want in order to bolster up our beliefs. It's like,
as in
Mercury's in retrograde, and that's why everyone's going crazy at the moment. Not because of current political climates, not because people are getting older, not because, it's difficult in the world. It's just that people want to believe something, they want to pin it on something bigger than themselves. So that's what happened with us. We started, attributing this coincidence of being diagnosed with this disorder, and then my grandmother typing up a book about the man of miracles, Sai Baba.
Right. This is Sai Baba in India, Sai Baba.
In India, yeah. Sai Baba, he was called Satya Sai Baba, which ironically means truth.
Yes, Satya is truth.
Satya is
actually,
truth, yeah. There was one before him, and the one before him explained that there was going to be another one after him, and then there was going to be another one after this one as well. So Shirdi Sai Baba was the one who brought together Muslims, and he was a fakir, as they call it, who brought together Muslims and Hindus. Yeah, and that was his big legacy. And from after that, it was Satya Sai Baba, who was born in the 20s.
I remember reading a quote by Satya Sai Baba, which I really loved actually, and I think I remember putting it up in our warehouse back in West End, and it went something like, there is only one nation, the nation of humanity. There is only one religion, the religion of love. There is only one language, the language of the heart. And there is only one God that is omnipresent. And I loved that because it was so open and all-inclusive,
And that for us was beautiful. We as I explained to you when we were talking, the puddle theory.
Yes.
And
just tell me about that again.
It's where you find yourself with some, like for the instance, with some belief that comes to you that actually fits your worldview anyway. So you think that this worldview actually was meant for you because it fits you.
Kind of endorses it.
It does, endorses it. And so there's a whole lot of belief that comes along with that and then you start looking for things to prop up your belief. And so that's what we did. And but at the time, of course, we didn't know it was that. We just thought it was as Sai Baba said, his calling card. And
so grandmother was typing up this manuscript.
And I was standing next to her.
Yes.
Reading it out. I just remember she used to get the Tipex out because I would read ahead and I go, oh, sorry, that's the wrong word. And she'd go, she'd get the Tipex out.
So I can imagine this vision of your grandmother, and it must have been one of those old typewriters.
Oh,
I would
yes,
imagine.
absolutely,
yes.
one of the
not
old
the electronic
green,
ones.
No,
those chunky ones that my mother used to use on them. Clack 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 clack, and then smooth that whole thing to get that.
That's exactly it. It was a kind of a green, a bit like that one over there. Yeah. And I would be reading it out to her, and then she would be thinking, because she thought it was a book on philosophy because she was hard of hearing, and she heard philosophy, not theosophy, and it was actually theosophy. And she said if she had registered or recognized it was theosophy, she herself, being an agnostic Jewish woman, would have said, oh, no, thanks, I'm not interested in the job.
Right.
But she was just piqued. It piqued her interest because she was learning about things feminism and other religions and other cultures and other, just expanding her horizons at the time. So she looked at me reading out this manuscript. And she reading it, looking at me, reading it, typing, going, putting two and two together, and maybe Sai Baba could help cure my granddaughter.
Because he was kind of out there as a healer, doing miracles and stuff.
Well, putting lots of big claims out there about healing and how he was an avatar before the word avatar was popular. Avatar meaning, which original meaning meant a direct descendant from God. So we sort of met the author, who was a lovely man, him and his wife, Howard and Iris Murfitt. We met them. We cried bhakti tears, which is tears of release. My grandmother released kind of agnostic ways and broke down and we became devotees very quickly after that. And, of course, I was young, so I believed it 100%.
Wow.
100%.
We're so malleable as children, isn't it? And like sponges almost. And also I think I was reading somewhere, for children, parents are their gods. So anything a parent tells a child, they'll believe them.
Especially my
so
grandmother.
So you better be telling them good stuff, because they'll believe everything you tell them.
And I'm very much of the opinion that I like, especially now as I grow older, when I teach, for instance, I teach what I hope is people how to think rather than what to think. Because everyone has
to blatantly believe.
Yeah.
To question.
Yeah, to question.
Yes.
I was a big questioner. And, of course, throughout our devotee years with Sai Baba, there was always a question that was burning in my mind that was never answered, and that is it God's will or is it our will? And that was never addressed. And so I will say that there was a ton of thought-terminating cliches that were thrown at me. It is what it is. Don't try and understand Sai Baba's mystery, just get immersed in him, which is a thought-terminating cliche. It stops all thought. Okay. So we would, so anything that would stray us off the path, we were reined in by lots of things, lots of little
words,
adages,
and language that kind of
that stopped us,
shut you down,
shut the down. Yeah.
I always think to myself, why would we have been given intellect if we were expected to suspend it?
Exactly.
You're not expected to take your intellect and put it aside. Why would you be given it in the first place? So use it. But tell me something. You did get cured by.
I did.
You did. So
I did, which is really quite interesting, because when I did get cured, it's a longer story for another time. But when we met Sai Baba in 1979, he said quite not ironically, but quite mysteriously, he said that I cured myself, which, as it turns out, was the truth.
I believe that.
I went into remission and cured myself because my belief was 100,000,000%. You couldn't have told me that it was not true. You could have presented all the arguments. I wouldn't have believed. I believed so strongly that I cured myself. And
that's amazing.
Yes.
I mean, that in itself, if you threw everything else away, I know you're not a devotee of Sai Baba today.
Not anymore, no.
But if you just took that all you got to do is believe and feel the feeling of having been cured, that you can make it happen.
Well, I won't say that either, because there's people who believe and they don't get cured. Right. I was just very lucky. I think because I was a child, there was an element of my absolute 100% devotion. And I liked being devotional. I liked ritual.
And you used to sing.
Yes, we sang bhajan, which is like kirtan. People say kirtan or bhajan. Devotional singing was absolutely joyous to me, and I loved learning things in languages, hence my love of multiculturalism, because I love learning songs in languages. I love the devotional aspect. I love the way it takes you away. I love the idea behind the songs, the sweetness, the surrender. It just fit my worldview so beautifully that I was perfect, right for the picking, really. I was the right person. I always said that if I was a bit older, I probably wouldn't have been cured, because I got more skeptical as I got older.
Correct.
As the world showed me different
Yes,
differences.
because as children, you've got a very your worldview is much more
Narrow.
Is pure. Is pure in that
narrow,
sense. You know, you
yes,
haven't been
absolutely.
contaminated by anything. So if somebody
Nothing.
tells you something, bang, you believe that.
Oh, and I wanted to believe because I saw that my parents really needed me to believe this, and I realize now it's because they were so desperate.
Say that again. You saw that your parents needed you to believe this.
Yeah.
What do you mean?
Because they needed to believe it. I needed to believe it, and because we decided not to go with conventional medicine. We didn't. We did short-term hormone therapy,
Right.
which gave me weight gain, obesity, pimples, hair loss, all of that stuff because it was male hormones. It could have been quite devastating if I'd kept going, but it was to give me quality of life, not to give me a cure. So we went off it completely and went on to the ash that he so-called produces, manifests called vibhuti. And that was to pray. And I did it diligently, didn't miss a day, absolutely 100%. And I knew that, and my grandparents also bribed me. They said, I was a nerdy stamp collector. They said, if your blood count goes up, we'll give you first day cover and we'll give you some more stamps. And
Wow.
there was always, and I finally kind of got some attention from my grandparents, my grandfather mostly, and from my grandmother, I guess. Any attention for kids is good attention, not negative. So, yeah.
Wow.
It was, looking back, there's, you can really unpack a lot of the stuff as and I really did believe. I really did. I believed and believed and believed until I saw something.
And being white in an Indian ashram kind of thing or whatever. Was it an ashram that you were in? What was it?
Yeah. I was at the ashram where he was born.
Yeah, back in those days, at least from what I remember and recall, if you're white in India, they kind of treat you like you're a goddess kind of thing. So you would have got even more.
Especially back in those days,
yes,
in the 70s.
And a singing goddess.
Well,
and one whose illness was cured. So
yes, that was the big thing. It was because my illness was cured. Not everybody's is. So I was given a probably more special treatment. I didn't feel like it was any more special, but it's because there was more Indians and Westerners going there.
You were like a star child.
We I guess we were. I didn't feel it, but I guess we were. Yeah.
And so, when and how did you find out that?
It was when I was just about to turn 50, actually. So it wasn't very long ago. It was about 7 years ago, and there was a Sai Baba of old. This Satya Sai Baba died, and a new one came in his place, and there was a bit of a split. Because some people said, he's going to come in however many years, this is when it decreed and all this stuff. And this new one, I instantly had skepticism about him because I was more skeptical as a human.
Yes. How old were you?
When it was 20, I can't remember, it was 2015 or 16 when I found out about this guy, this new Sai Baba.
Would have been a little bit later than that, maybe. I'm just going back. It was 2017 when I met you. You were still a believer in Sai Baba, I think.
Was I?
When I met you in the pool?
The end of the year I wasn't.
Yes.
By the end of the year I wasn't.
So it would have been soon after.
Yeah, very soon after. Yeah, so it must have been 2017. So, but 2016, 2015 was when I first went to the ashram with the new ashram, and I did 3 years of choir
in the
directing.
new ashram.
Yeah, before it. So maybe it's 2018. Yeah. So it was about then, and I was in an interview, and I actually saw him take, like, not materialize. He was supposed to materialize these gifts and things and these little trinkets that he gave. And I saw him take it from behind him, from under this chair. It was very bold almost. No one else seemed to see it because they weren't looking, but I was just far enough away that I could see his hand. And I'm like, what? And my whole, everything in me dropped. I had this massive shock because it was about to destroy my whole worldview at that moment. So that's when I found out, and I walked out, and I couldn't talk to my friends. And my friends, by the end of it, I was like asking people around the ashram, I saw something, I just need to tell somebody about it. And they were like, oh no, that's just his play, his leela. There was always a reason, he's testing you, all of that sort of stuff. Not that actually he was a fraud. And so I
Must have been devastating for
was
you, isn't it? Because for so many years you've held this person in such high regard, almost like a
not
god.
this particular one. He was supposed to represent the other previous one, but this one was channeling him, and then he suddenly became him. It was all very, very, very bombastic and unbelievable, to be honest. I didn't believe it, but I was kind of forced into believing it because he gathered information about me and then told it back to me in a way that made it sound like he knew who I was, but actual fact, people had told him. So it was like,
it's like
charlatan.
almost like the rug being pulled out from underneath you because you kind
exactly
of believe
the words.
Everything.
My whole
like your whole world is centered around wow.
It's quite emotional actually, because I believed 100% and I couldn't reconcile. I was like 42 years of my life being in this, what now is realised as a cult.
Goodness me.
It was hard, and it was hard because all the people in the Sai Baba group I loved. They were all lovely people because lovely people go to this
and
this
do you
aspect,
think, now I'm just listening to you and thinking to myself, so if I was believing in something so, staunchly, and that suddenly got taken out from me, and then suddenly there's something kind of missing in my life to cling on to, because we kind of, whether we like it or not, as human beings, we feel like we've got to attach to something, connect with something, or look up to something, belong. That's the word, belong to something.
And that's the connection I felt. Felt connection in the Sai Baba group.
How did you deal with that void almost of not having something to belong with? For me, it's the way you are with your choirs is almost like that. You started to operate in like, connecting people.
Well, I've always done that.
Yes. Okay.
Always done that. It's never changed. The funny thing was there's a lot of crying, a lot of being quiet in my room, a lot of going online and trying to unpack everything and trying to still be a good person, like, and not get too angry. Like it sort of coincided with menopause. So it was lots of anger. There was a lot of anger. But
that wouldn't have been easy, menopause and rug being pulled out.
I know. Thank you. It wasn't. It was so hard. And I spent a lot of time in my room, just, like on my bed, watching podcasts and watching, trying to make sense of it all.
Yes.
Talking to a friend of mine who had kind of helped me put the bits together. He's a musician that I met, and he was talking about his father who died on the table basically, and then got recovered, and he said, I was a religious person. I'm no longer a religious person. There's nothing out there. And so he helped me to see everything kind of falls away. All the dross falls away when the truth is revealed. And it's interesting because I actually feel more empathetic towards humans now that I have the truth rather than there's that whole...
When you were wrapped up in cotton wool with this whole, yes.
And, there's a thing called spiritual bullying. I call it spiritual bullying, where people bully you into being more spiritual. Obviously you haven't done this, or you haven't, the universe is trying to punish you, or God is trying to... And I'd be like, I don't get it. If God gave us all these things, and Sai Baba gave me all these things, why am I not allowed to... why am I not allowed to actually do them? Why am I not actually allowed to think this or think that? Or why is that wrong? And, it's like it became very much about unpacking and unraveling and deconstructing myself. It was really hard. But, all through all that, what I clung to was my choirs and my teaching because to me, that was the true connection, real connection, real connecting.
Beautiful.
You can have relationships you can relate but not have real relationships.
Authentic connection.
And it was because we were literally in the same room together singing. That's the only truth there is in some ways.
Absolutely. I'm with you on that 1,000%.
Yeah,
yes.
What's the word for it I'm looking for? It's real. It's reality.
Yes.
It's reality. And something about that human connection that we crave. And I have to thank Sai Baba. This is the difficult thing, is I had to thank Sai Baba because my first experience with with being a choir director was in front of a 50,000 strong audience with a 500-piece choir.
And you were how
That was
old?
my first, 23. Wow. And I'd never taken
is
a choir
back in
before.
India?
In India, in the ashram. And all I'd done is, I'd been in choirs, one choir myself, and school choirs, but also my sister and my mother and I used to sing 3-part harmonies together,
Wow.
And so I used to direct it a little bit. I used to say, okay, Lonnie, you stay on the melody. She was really good at staying on the melody. Mum, you sing the third and I'll sing the one above that or below that, whatever. She introduced us to so much music with so much harmony that I was very attuned to harmony, and it was very easy for me to pick out harmonies. So when I became the conductor, Sai Baba at the time, the old one, made it all look like it was all meant to be, and I don't know how he weaves his way in. And look, he, by all intents and purposes, on the outside, he seemed very good and loving and magnanimous and all of those things, but ultimately it was a cult, and also he did very bad things to people, and people have it's been ignored because he was such a powerful figure. It was all ignored.
So sometimes when we're so desperate to belong, Yani, I think we can quite easily overlook some things, and
100%.
Yes, that's a big, very human instinct.
We want to, because there's a thing called the sunk cost fallacy.
Correct, yes.
Where we sink so much time, energy and belief into something that it's embarrassing and it's hard because people go away from you. I mean, immediately the people who I was traveling with immediately disassociated themselves from me because they knew something was up. And
they didn't want you to interrupt their strong belief in
no,
him. Yes.
And all their kindness and
you would have been the devil incarnate.
I was, yes, and that hurt so much. They barely spoke to me on the way home.
Oh wow!
And it was
because you chose to question.
Yeah, I chose to question, and of course, what happens to disbelievers or people who are out of the cult? They get cut off. It's like and in a way with ours, when we heard about people who were non-believers again or non-believers, all of a sudden it was sort of pitying. It was like, oh, never mind, that's their journey, and rather
look,
than.
I'm so sorry that you had to. Your whole bubble was burst.
Thank you.
And the experience that you've had to, the grief and all the suffering and pain that you'd have dealt with at the end of that. After how many years?
42 years.
Wow.
And, I really wanted to stay in that belief. I really did. Yeah. It was really hard. I gave everything.
You look at you where you are now. You're absolutely amazing. You're changing lives. In my opinion, you are doing much more than what Sai Baba ever did just by bringing people together and connecting them through singing, healing them through singing. And, that's the beautiful gift that you bring to the world, Yani. So
thank you, Carolyn.
Yeah.
Thanks for seeing that in me.
No, you absolutely do, and I get moved every time I hear you in a choir. And I've been a member of your choir, and I couldn't sing. Remember,
or I thought I couldn't sing. You thought you couldn't sing, but
I thought I couldn't sing. Yes, I have two very powerful singers in my family. Yes,
yeah.
And you also, I remember telling me about you struggling, coming back to belonging.
Yeah.
Through your life. I'm sorry I made you.
No, it's good. It's real.
Throughout your life, you kind of struggled with belonging, and because
I was
of all
very
the
much an
different,
outsider. The witchy doctor thing we were talking about.
Yes, and so given where you are now and what you're doing with your life in terms of bringing people together through song and all of that, what advice would you give to somebody who's struggling with belonging?
That's a really good question. I think it's very simple in some ways, is to go find something you love doing and go find the people that are doing that. Like for me, I feel really happy when I'm singing. Like I find singing people, I get really happy because there's a similar thing that happens to everyone when they're singing. Endorphins and the dopamine and the bonding hormones and the oxytocin and the breathing together and the fact that a beautiful sound is coming out with you as part of it. It's so inspiring to be that. Like I've been in, I love dancing as well. I do love dancing. Some dance schools are more inclusive and more interested in people feeling comfortable being in there than others, though, I must say. And so it's interesting going to other choirs and other schools where I do something I love and how welcome they make you feel. And it's been a huge passion of mine to make people feel welcome as soon as they come in.
Yes, wow. That's the gift that you bring.
I hope so.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. From day one of your choir practices, and I was there for one
Maruka
block
choir.
of, yes, the Maruka block choir.
I remember.
So I do know the way you operate. And so for our guests, I suppose, but no, before I go on to that last, which is my punch question, you did very slightly touch about your dad. And so I didn't quite get to any stories. Just share, you reconnected. So you were, your dad and you separated from your father separated from your mother when you were about 3?
3.5 in Israel.
You lived in a kibbutz, you said?
Kibbutz.
That was amazing.
In Tel Aviv.
And then you reconnected with dad when you were around 16, is that correct?
Yes, when he was coming back to Australia from America, from Ohio. His mother had died, so he was coming for her funeral in Melbourne, and he stopped on the way to meet us.
And what was that like for you?
I so desperately wanted him to like me, and he was very shy and not very outgoing. And he'd ask me a lot of questions, stupid things like, "Have you got a boyfriend?" Those sort of things that men ask you. And I said, no. And he said, do you smoke? And I went, yeah, I do actually. So we had a cigarette together. He gave me a lighter, which I held onto, a Bic lighter that said made in the USA, that I had for about 5 years. I kept for about 5 years. And I said, this is the only gift my dad's ever given me.
Wow.
Yeah.
And did you have contact with dad through the years from 3 to 16?
No, we lost contact. We were trying to, but he wasn't easy to find.
Right.
And he had a new family. And, it just wasn't as easy to contact people in those days, I guess, and especially if you didn't want to be found. I don't know a lot about what happened, why. But, yeah, he did reconnect when I was 16.
And do you think, Yani, because you said you didn't have a really good connection with your grandfather as well, correct?
No, another man I tried desperately to please and never came up short.
Yes.
I mean, my dad was actually more accepting of me towards the end. Like I realised that it was more about who he was rather than who I was. But he just said offhand things, bless him. But actually he sat me down when I was much older and said, ask me anything, which Mum never did. He said, ask me anything. And I said, okay, tell me about this. Why did this happen? And so I found out more of the story of my mum and dad, She kept a little bit to herself. She was a bit reticent in coming forward with information about them because there's a lot of shame behind it.
When did your dad pass?
He passed in 2011.
And how old were you at that time?
How old was I? 2011. So how many years ago? I have to do maths. Don't make me do maths. That's not my strong point.
2021, 14 years ago.
14 years ago, yeah. So
I'm not
43
asking.
or something, yeah.
Okay, so he passed at 43, and you've known him since you were 16 to 43. So that's quite a long time. Was he in your life much after that?
Not a lot. I sort of I connected more with his kids, especially his youngest, Jamie, who's
with his second wife.
Yes. Yeah, his
your half sister.
Half sister, yeah. She was a budding musician and she came to stay with us a little bit. And
lovely.
It was really nice. It was funny because at first we didn't have much in common, the half siblings and I, and it was hard to reconnect. And I tried desperately too, but I think. And this is why it's so important to me about connection with music and singing, is that if you establish a connection immediately, then all the pretense and the stiffness and the tenseness and the wondering and the feelings of sort of anticipation and awkwardness leave.
Yeah.
So once you can break the ice. So
Yeah.
for me, I'm always been an icebreaker.
Yeah.
Always loved being an icebreaker because then I can feel comfortable. And I didn't realize till many, many years later that I was the one with the anxiety, not other people.
Oh, wow.
That I had the anxiety. I hated big crowds. My biggest fear is and still is to this day, is to walk into a room full of people and they all turn around and say, hello, Yani, or hello, or look at me. That is terrifying. And no one believes me because they think I'm such an extrovert. But in actual fact, I like slipping out. I like ghosting. I will ghost at a party.
Really?
Oh, yeah. Friends will probably know this because I go, where did Yani go? Oh, and we must have said goodbye.
And yet you have such a big impact as a personality. You do. You're such a big personality when you're in choir.
When I'm in choir, when it's the appropriate time.
Yes.
And then
yes.
when it's not, I pull back and I just be the.
And I loved what you said before is that you
participant.
try to, as soon as you start, you make people feel welcome as soon as they come the first day of your choir. Because I remember my mum, she was an opera singer, and whenever she sang, her whole body used to go like, she would just completely be relaxed.
Yeah.
And you could actually visually see her completely relaxed, and then the sound that came out of her. So I'm thinking that would also probably help with when people are more relaxed, they can sing better. And you know what I mean? Apart from already having connected and that, am I with a stranger? No, I'm not. I'm with somebody I've kind of already connected with. And so you're relaxed, you're connected, and the sound would be beautiful.
And honestly, I think the world is so much better when people do connect in that way because we're so divided now on the internet and there's just so much misinformation and disinformation and wanting people to arc up so that someone can get engagement or something. So
Yeah.
people purposefully go to negativity and making people feel alienated.
Yes.
And it's really been a big job to try and make people feel comfortable.
Of
Because
course.
sometimes people will make me feel uncomfortable. Like some choir members, when they first come, they will do their best to try and
Oh, wow.
not intentionally, but it's like they definitely are butting their heads against, probably maybe being in choirs before, other things before, where the expectation is
Come, sing, go.
yes.
Not
and I'm
come,
like,
connect,
no.
sing, play, connect, eat, then go.
Exactly. Thank you. You've nailed it. You've nailed me. You've got me.
And I've kind
Always-
of answered
always
my
eating.
last question. So I want you to tell our
Okay.
audience what your choirs are about. I mean, how you conduct your choirs and what choir members can expect if they join Yani, a choir that's run by Yani.
Well, I have this tagline, sing, learn, laugh, connect.
Nice.
And that's what I'm hoping because I keep looking for other things to put in there. And it's like, no, sing, always learning,
Yes.
laughing and connecting and, of course, eating. However, I think the sense of belonging, because it's no longer my choir, even if they don't like me after a while, they'll still like the other participants.
Yes.
The old choir I have had Tongues of Fire. When that sort of broke down because nobody was turning up, they had like 3 people. It was on a Sunday and Brisbane was becoming quite a cosmopolitan town around then. And people were going away on the weekends and stuff, so there wasn't enough people to continue it going. But they still now go to each other's births, deaths, funerals, all of these things. They know each other so well because singing connected them in a way that nothing else has. And I always say when you sing, it's like you create something. And I say it's like a baby. That's why in a band, when bands break up, it's like breaking up a marriage.
Breakup, yes.
It is. And because you create all these babies, which are the
Correct.
songs
Yes,
and the
yes.
feeling. And so it's quite emotional. It's more emotional than working with someone because you've created something so spiritual and so dear and so meaningful that when it goes, it's quite a
Because
big.
it's a co-creation. It's not just Yani creating. It's 20 people in the choir creating together, and you need every one of those 20 to rock up every time to create this masterpiece that will eventually be at the end of those 8 weeks or whatever. But I love that connection when you intertwine connection exercises through your sessions, practice sessions. What that does is it connects people, and then people, as you said, come maybe not for the singing, but they'll come for the connection. But then it
Exactly.
serves 2 purposes. You need all 20 there to, your choir is only as strong as the weakest, the one that doesn't come.
That's
you
right.
know what I mean? And
People
so-
don't. When people understand that, because it becomes like a microcosm of the macrocosm.
Yes.
You know, you get all sorts of people, and so you get people going, look, I don't feel like going, but I know if I go, not only will I feel better, but I will be doing my bit for the other people. So there's a little bit of selflessness and selfishness and looking after yourself and looking after others and feeling that respect for the process and the fact that it takes you and as well as everyone else. It's honestly the most, if I could say spiritual, it's the most spiritual thing I've ever done.
Beautiful.
Is the choir work. Absolutely, 100%. I would say it's the most, it brings out a lot in yourself too. You've got to be patient. It's brought out so much patience in me. I feel like I've had children, that the choir are my children.
Wow.
And when people say, oh, you never get cross at us, I was like, I don't really. I might look like I'm getting cross because sometimes people talk and it's like when mummy gets angry, people go, oh, you know, so it looks like I'm getting, come on, but I'm not really cross at all. Inside, deep inside, I'm like, I love you people. You're amazing. Look at you putting yourselves out there, and your voices out there. And it's a vulnerable position.
Yes.
You know?
Yes.
And so I'm always in awe of everyone that comes to my choir. Always like, you know what? They're going through a lot and this is good for them. And this is good because it's good for them, it's good for the world. And it lights me up and it makes me feel like something's right with the world when there's a choir singing, you know.
Thank you so much, Yani. That was beautifully and very eloquently explained. And I'm just going to share one very quick thing for you. First of all, to our guests, if you haven't been a member of Yani's choir and you've always thought, I wish I could sing, or I wish I could, you don't need to actually know how to sing because you can quite easily hide in the other voices. I know from first experience that when I joined one of your choirs, or the first choir,
the miracle one. Yeah.
Yes. I used to stand behind so you couldn't hear me, but then you would say, now the altos can sing. And so I would purposely go a little softer because I know your ears are sharp and you'd pick up every one of our voices.
I purposefully don't. I purposely I go,
but I could almost feel that you were tuning into each of our ears, our voices rather.
Well, actually, I was tuning into your souls, I guess, or your feeling, your essences a lot more.
Yeah,
you know.
But you were very inclusive and didn't make any one of us feel that we couldn't sing or we were not as good as somebody else. So
good. I'm so glad.
Yes, if you haven't been to a choir or you've always wanted to sing, Yani's choir is one to join.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Yani, for joining me this evening and sharing your amazing story with our audience.
Bless you for what you do, Carolyn. I love what you do. I love this podcast. I love everything. And if you don't know much about Carolyn, find out about her in the Ubuntu Foundation, and also a little plug for the Ubuntu Choir that you're supporting, very generously supporting the Ubuntu Wellness Choir. And that's what I want all choirs to be, wellness or well-being choirs.
I love it. I love the name.
That's what
Ubuntu
we
Wellness.
need more of. We need more mental, emotional, physical and spiritual well-being, and that's what I want them to be from now on. That's the legacy I want to leave, and you're helping to do that, and the people that you support to do that is far-reaching and you have no idea. And I respect you so much and I love what you do, and thank you for letting me be part of your life and your story.
My pleasure. Thanks, Yani.